Hey guys, what's happening? Kevin Yates here. Yates Performance Training, just finishing up some minimalist muscle building here. At least that's what I call it. Focusing all my energy and effort today on squatting, and feeling pretty good today on that. But I wanted to talk today about how to squat, or if you should squat if you have quote unquote bad knees. This is something that happens to a lot of us as we get older, especially over 40, over 50. The thing is that it's very easy to start to think that, we need to avoid squatting. There's certain things that we can't do, running, jumping. And this is kind of the mindset that we can fall into. And I've seen a lot of people that fall into that, and for good reason, because if you have knee pain when you squat, it's not fun. It doesn't feel good. And obviously you don't want to be doing anything that makes your pain feel worse, or worse, risk a significant injury from pushing yourself, right? Trying to push through pain. So that's not what this is about. I just wanted to share a little bit, and, I'll talk a little bit as well from my own previous experience, having dealt with more nagging aches, pains, and recurring kind of injuries that just never really successfully resolved themselves, and I tried everything, and things just were not working. And, that was when I was in my early 30s. So, it was a long road for me to figure out the things that I needed to do and how to resolve these aches, pains, and injuries when, all the other exercises and stretches and, seeing doctors and chiropractors and pain relievers and doing all these other things were not working, because I hate to see people having their lives taken away from them, having to give up doing the things they love to do because they're in pain all the time, and they just can't find any answers. So, when it comes to, squatting, the big question is, should you squat if you have bad knees, or if you have knee pain for that matter? And that, we can put in low back pain, we can put in hip pain, shoulder pain, we can throw a lot of different types of, pain problems into this scenario. But I will talk specifically more about knee pain today, and I'll say this, it's easy in the gym, when we're working out at home, to avoid doing things like squatting, right? You can just avoid doing the exercise, and, your knees might feel better. You're not going to flare them up then, right? If you avoid them. But the thing that I've always seen this as kind of the problem with that approach is that, we can avoid doing things in the gym, but we can't always avoid doing these things in life. And squatting is one of, what I call like the 6 foundational movements, where this is a movement that we really do in our everyday lives. We constantly have to do it. If you think about everything from sitting down in a chair, standing up, getting in and out of a car, picking something up off the floor in the house. We can argue maybe it's closer to a deadlift, but it involves some form of squatting, some variation of squatting, and we can't get away from it. So while we can avoid doing that type of movement in the gym, it becomes, in my opinion, a bigger risk in our everyday lives when we have to do a movement like that and we're not physically prepared to do it, because all we've done is train ourselves to avoid doing the movement, and when we avoid doing things, the brain and nervous system kind of forget, right, how to do them. So it's kind of like, with everything else, like learning to ride a bike or play a sport. Practice makes perfect, right? Or at least makes you better. And it's the same thing with squatting, so it is a fundamental movement that we need to do. Now, the question is then, how do we squat, or, how are we supposed to be able to squat if every time you do it, you have knee pain, right? A lot of times we think we just have quote unquote bad knees. And I would argue that's not the case. Yes, you might feel pain in your knees. I used to get that all of the time. I remember like driving home from work when I had to commute about 2 to 3 hours home, in traffic, and, going through like a lower body workout and a squat day. And when I'd be sitting in the car, It's like it felt like somebody was jamming an ice pick in my knees. It just hurt like hell. And it was like the whole ride home, and after, my knees would be throbbing and all that kind of stuff. So I do get it. And it took me a long time to figure out that, in almost all of the cases that I've seen over the years, and I've been doing this over 23 years, 23 and a half, is that it's never really the exercise that's the problem. It more has to do with how we're doing the exercise, or more specifically, how we're performing the movement. And a lot of times there's subtle things that are going on in our bodies that we don't recognize, that are what I call like red flags or weak links, where we can get away with these things going on for a certain amount of time, but they carry a high potential risk for injury or for pain at some point down the road. It's like, the straw that finally breaks the camel's back, so to speak. We keep doing it, and we're fine. We don't feel anything. Maybe you get little twinges here and there, but you're able to work through it until you get the straw that breaks the camel's back and you can't. Now you have pain. And by then it's like, this process has been set in motion a lot of times for months or years. So what do we do about it then? So one of the first things that I look at, like, rather than just label a movement as like bad, or I have bad knees, or this is a bad exercise, it's bad for my knees, right? Squatting, again, I'll say it, I do not believe squatting is bad for the knees. I think it's the opposite, as long, meaning that it's good for our knees, it's good for our joints, it's good for our muscles, it's good for our entire body, provided that we do it correctly. And so just because, we can put a bar on our back and squat down and stand up with it, doesn't mean that we're squatting correctly. It doesn't mean that we don't have some red flags in there that we need to be aware of, or some weak links in the movement that are putting us at a risk for pain or injury. So one of the things that I look at is like, why is it there? Why is the pain there? Not so much that, okay, I have knee pain from squatting, I have bad knees, or I can't squat. Why is it there? Because there's always a reason why it's there. And if you watch my other videos, I'll say it again and again, that pain is not caused by bad knees. Knee pain is not a knee issue. It is caused by the brain. The brain sends the pain signal to the area of the body in order to try to get you to either stop doing a certain movement because something somewhere in the body is wrong. So it's our job to try to assess and figure out, like, why is it there? What's going on? And then once we identify what's happening, it's so much easier to fix it and to work with it, right? So that we don't have the pain. So one of the things now that we can look at are like variations. So one of the things is like, there's no one kind of way to squat, right? Squatting doesn't mean that we have to put a barbell on our back and do it. So that might be one of the things. Sometimes it's just changing a variation that can help out. So for example, instead of a barbell squat, we can do squats like goblet squats, or a front squat variation. We can do different things like squatting with a heavy medicine ball or a sandbag, like a Zercher type squat. These are different ways that we can do it. I'll give you an example, like barbell squatting. It's more than just putting a bar on your back and squatting for the lower body. It's like, to put a bar on your back, you really have to have good shoulder mobility, meaning that you have to be able to open it up, externally rotate, and retract your shoulders and open them up to hold a bar properly on your back. And if you can't do that, if you have poor posture, rounded shoulders, and I should say you also need to have good mobility in your thoracic spine. If you lack any of those, it can predispose the upper body. It puts you in a bad position to have a bar on your back and squat. But more importantly, that affects everything all the way down the chain of movement. So the upper body affects the lower body and vice versa. Meaning that if you've got a bar on your back, you don't have good shoulder mobility, you don't have good T-spine mobility, and you put that bar on your back and your posture's off, your movement's gonna be off, and that's gonna force a lot of other, what do I wanna call, joint mechanics, right, in the body, all the way down the chain, all the way down through your spine, to your hips, to your legs to your knees, right? And feet and ankles, like there's increased stress because there's now improper movement that's happening, and it affects everything all the way, down below the chain. So something like knee pain from squatting can actually be caused by something like poor shoulder mobility or thoracic spine mobility. It's not the only cause. It's just one example of how, pain can happen because of different things happening somewhere else in the body. So, that's one example, but again, variations, right? And, the other thing is that, squats can be used. Like one of the things that I learned was that squats, did not have to just be like a strengthening exercise. Like we tend to think about, what exercises can I do to strengthen my knees or strengthen the muscles in my legs, right? Thinking that if we get stronger, if we make those muscles stronger, then that will help us have less pain, especially knee pain. And that's not always the case because, again, if there's something that's wrong in the movement, if we have red flags or weak links in the movement itself, and then we try to strengthen that movement by throwing weight on top of it, such as putting a weighted barbell on our back, what happens, instead of making the muscles stronger and decreasing pain, it does the opposite, because it increases the imbalances that already exist in the body and can often make them worse. So, we got to be careful about, kind of one size fits all with the types of exercise we do. So the type of squat that we do, or how we use squatting. So for example, like I just said, squatting doesn't have to just be a strengthening exercise. We don't have to load a heavy weight on a bar or, on our body and squat heavy. We can squat to improve, just muscle mass, which is different from strength. We can squat to improve endurance. We can squat to improve our overall mobility, just overall joint mobility. We can squat to improve explosiveness, power, speed. All of those things we can do. Like we can use squats for it. And it requires a little different approach to how we do a squat rather than just the standard way we think, right? Go to a squat rack, put weight on a bar and squat, or squat heavy. It doesn't have to be that way. And, the more kind of ways that we realize we can use squatting can have a lot of benefits, especially for helping with quote unquote bad knees, right? So another thing that, I'm very, very big on, I talk about this in, not all of them, but many of the other videos I've been doing, is using Neurotype drills, right? Drills for the brain and the nervous system, in a way that incorporates that with your body. So it's not just muscles that we're training. We have to stop thinking that we're just training muscles, because the engine that drives the muscles is the brain and the nervous system. So if anything within the brain and nervous system are off, if they're inhibited, if they're understimulated, underactivated, that can have an effect on our strength. It has effects on our mobility. It has effects on pain. So, by one of the things that I do is like adding like Neurotype drills, and I do have videos on this. It could be things like doing sensory stimulation to different areas of the body. It can be something like muscle mapping. I've done videos on these. If you look on my channel, you'll find some videos on this stuff. We can just, do different types of, like, it might be visual system type drills. I talked about one of my friends who was a drummer and a bowler and was having some major shoulder mobility and shoulder pain issues that he could not resolve with any form of medical treatments or therapy or exercise or stretching. And it wasn't until we identified the area within the visual system that was caused by an area in the brain. We had to do a couple of drills, and he saw some immediate improvements in his mobility. It improved right away. And he started getting better like really quick. So, do not ignore the brain and the nervous system. Sprinkling in some, neuro-based drills can really have a good effect and help improve your ability to squat. So, those are some of the things in there. So, if you have issues with, knee pain from squatting, don't just dismiss it as it's your age, right? You're getting older and you can't do it. And do not tell yourself it's just because you have bad knees. I am a big believer in the power of mindset as well, in that, the story that we tell ourselves becomes the truth or the reality that we live and experience. If we keep telling ourselves, I can't squat, squatting's bad for my knees, I have bad knees, we keep telling ourselves that same story, we will adopt movements and behaviors that make it so. So, the power mindset is a huge thing because, if we get into the depths of it, when I talked about the threat bucket, and the more threat that we experience, the more sensitive we become to pain, the more it changes how we move. It decreases mobility. It reduces strength and makes us more prone to pain and injury. So if you think that, your thoughts can't affect your knee pain, think again. They really can, and they do. So that's about it. So, hopefully that helped, thinking about like some squat variations that you can use, thinking about the way that you use squats. So it doesn't have to just be for strength only. You can use it for a lot of different outcomes, and change those things up. And, looking into the reason why, right? Looking into the brain and the nervous system, and, incorporate some of those drills and see which ones have the best effect on your movement, which ones improve your mobility and or help to reduce your pain. So, those are just some of the ideas that I had here and wanted to share with you, and hopefully that helps. In the meantime, click the links below in the description box, and if you have any other questions, feel free to type them in as well. Love to hear what you have to say about this. Love to hear how any of this has helped you. So till next time, take care, stay strong, and I will talk to you soon.